What's going on, everybody? Clayton Sayfie here with EJ Holland from the Wolverine.com. We're breaking down who is next in 2022 for Michigan tight end recruiting. The Wolverines landed a commitment on Tuesday from 2022 wide receiver tight end MARLIN Klein. Listed as a wide receiver on Rivals, but Michigan recruiting him 100% at tight end. You see Sharon Moore, the star recruiter and tight ends coach there behind EJ. So we're going to break down who might be next. Michigan probably looking to take a couple tight ends here in this next cycle. Before we do that, remember to follow all of our coverage over at thewolverine.com. Use promo code BLUE60 for 60 free days of that premium content. But EJ, MARLIN Klein joining the mix. Let's talk about him for really quickly before we get into the next five. An athletic kid, like I said, listed as a receiver on Rivals, plays receiver in high school, but he's a tight end. I like his frame. I like the fact that he's tall and has that athleticism to go up and get the ball. Your thoughts quickly on him?
Yeah, Marlin's definitely a receiving tight end, with Michigan only landing Matt Hibner 2 cycles ago and then Lewis Hanson this cycle. They really wanted to get more of a pure receiver. Hibner's an inline guy that can catch passes. Hanson's a good combo guy. I think Klein fits that split end guy that they were really looking for this cycle that they didn't land. So, that's why Michigan was really trying to make a push for Thomas Fidone. Obviously, he ended up going to Nebraska, but you get a Fidone-like guy in MARLIN Klein for next cycle. Like you said, he plays a lot of receiver, listed as a receiver. He's about 6'6", 215, definitely has the height and the frame to add a little bit of weight. With him, it's going to be all about learning how to inline block, but the potential is there. He's originally from Germany. He's only been playing football for a few years, so I think his best days are ahead of him. But of course, Michigan, with the numbers at tight end, would like to add a complement for him next cycle as well.
Yeah, watching a little bit of his highlights, I kind of liken him to, not quite yet physically, but a guy like Noah Fant in the NFL, former Iowa tight end that we have come to know here in the Big Ten, a guy who can really go up, athletic, get the ball. But let's talk about who's next here in 2022 at the tight end spot. Like you mentioned, just one guy at that position the last 2 cycles. So JALEEL Skinner, the first kid that we'll talk about here out of Greer, South Carolina, top 250 kid. Talk to us about JALEEL Skinner.
Yeah, Skinner's a really important target for Michigan next cycle. On September 1st, when college coaches were allowed to reach out to rising juniors, only 2 recruits got personal calls from Jim Harbaugh, and JALEEL Skinner was one of them. So that should tell you how high he is on the board from an overall standpoint. He's in South Carolina, but he actually grew up really liking Michigan. He wants to make a visit after the dead period. They are doing, putting in a lot of work in that recruitment. Like I said, Jim Harbaugh has been personally involved. Coach Moore has obviously been communicating with him on a consistent basis. He's kind of a package guy like Lewis Hanson in the sense that he can be an inline blocker, he can split out wide. So he's one of the true elite talents on the board. He's a Rivals 250 guy, but may end up being a Rivals 100 guy before it's all said and done.
And then next on the list, another name that I think has kind of been important and has been thrown around quite a bit, that those who follow Michigan recruiting are somewhat familiar with, Donovan Green, out of Dickinson, Texas, another top 250 kid. Break him down a little bit.
Yeah, Donovan Green, another high-level prospect. It's funny. I was on the Texas beat, and Donovan Green was a freshman, and I went out to a game featuring Dickinson. I was actually there to see an offensive lineman, Chad Lindbergh, who eventually ended up at Georgia. But I saw Donovan Green. He didn't play a lot, but I looked at the roster and I was like, man, that's a big kid for being a freshman on varsity. And even though he didn't see a lot of snaps, I definitely noticed him just on the sideline and the little bit of time he got in the game. He was, second string behind Jalen Weidermeyer, who ended up going to Texas A&M. But I saw the potential at a really young age. I didn't know I was going to be on the Michigan beat, and obviously didn't know he was going to turn into a big Michigan target. But He was a guy that caught my attention years ago, and now he's one of the premier tight ends nationally. I know he has a lot of interest in both Michigan and Ohio State. So while, schools closer to home down south are fighting for his services, he has a wandering eye, and he's not afraid to go, to head north and see Michigan and Ohio State. I think both schools have a legitimate chance at him, and Jim Harbaugh and Sharon Moore have both been in contact with him during the dead period. But he's a lot like Skinner in the sense that he can block in line. He's athletic as a pass catcher as well. So both he and Skinner are the top two guys kind of on the board right now from a rankings perspective.
Yeah, both certainly names to know as Michigan continues to really go after these 2022 kids, as the 2021 list, is starting to shrink here towards the end of the cycle. Let's get to the third guy on the list, Oscar Delp. He is from West Forsyth, Georgia. A lot of out-of-state kids here for tight end recruiting, but tell us a little bit about Oscar Delp.
Yeah, Oscar Delp, the Sith Lord himself. He's a prospect that, a lot of people don't really know about. He's not in that same range as Donovan Green or JALEEL Skinner from a ranking standpoint. So that's why I made it a point to say those two are at the top of the board from a ranking standpoint. But from where the staff sees him, he's right up there with Green and Skinner. I mean, Michigan was the first to offer Oscar Delp. Since then, he's added quite a few P5 offers. So what a tremendous early eval by Coach Moore to jump on him first. And I think that offer was really meaningful for him. And even though he's down south in Georgia, he's very, very interested in Michigan. And I think Michigan is, one of his early leaders and might have the overall edge just based on relationships at this point in the process. Once that period ends, if he doesn't make an early decision, I would expect him to visit Michigan pretty early. And he's another prospect like Marlin Klein, who plays a lot of wide receiver, but could add some weight and be an athletic split end that sometimes sees time in line. So very, comparable there, both of those guys, and both are in Georgia. So I do think that Michigan is making Oscar Delp a priority, and he's a prospect that, wouldn't surprise me if he ends up in the class.
Yeah, so Michigan could get both of its tight ends from the state of Georgia, if it is Oscar Delp, who's the other tight end in this class. Next guy on our list, Micah Riley from Bellevue West, Nebraska. Another kid who could possibly be that next guy at tight end for Michigan in 2022. Tell us a little bit about Micah Riley.
Yeah, Riley's not a guy that a lot of people are familiar with. We haven't talked a lot about, but he brings a nice athletic profile. Obviously, there are a lot of good tight ends coming out that way from Nebraska. So he's another kid that could definitely be a 4-star, top 250 prospect. There just isn't a whole lot known about him right now. I know he is interested in schools in Big Ten country, including Michigan. He's another guy that Moore has made sure to keep in weekly contact with. So Micah Riley could easily be a prospect that we talk more about. I think out of all the guys on the list, he's the most unfamiliar to everyone right now, but he's definitely a name to keep on your radar.
And then the final guy, not Josh Gaddis, Michigan's offensive coordinator, but Josh Kattus with a K from Cincinnati Archbishop Moeller. Tell us a little bit about Josh Kattus.
Yeah, Josh Kattus, that last name sounds familiar. KATTUS, not Gaddis. It's because his father, Eric, was a captain at Michigan, played in the NFL, so he has strong bloodlines. When I was out in Ohio last month, I had an opportunity to stop by and see him and meet with him and his father for a little bit. And he's a big kid. And so Kattus is last on this list because he's more of a developmental prospect. And honestly, he might turn into an offensive tackle. So in theory, Michigan could take 3 tight ends with the potential of moving Kattus over to being an offensive tackle because he is athletic. And right now he's, I believe, already at 245, 250. So he could easily add another 20 pounds and be an offensive tackle. But he's a really intriguing prospect. Again, great bloodlines, obvious ties to the Michigan program. So if Michigan pushes, I think it's a wrap and he ends up in the class. Whether Michigan's going to push or not, it's still up in the air. I think Michigan just wants to see how he continues to develop, what his body looks like by the end of this year, to see whether he is maybe a tight end candidate or he is an offensive line candidate. At this point, he has had no talks with Ed Warner, so it's just kind of unclear what his status is. But again, with his father being Eric Kattus, it makes a lot of sense for him to end up at Michigan if the Wolverines do decide to go that route.
Yeah, and I feel like you see a decent amount of tight ends move over to tackle at times. Would he be open to that? Did you talk to him about that possibility?
I think right now his focus is on tight end, especially with his father being, having played that position. So I think right now he's still kind of realizing what his potential could be. So it'll be interesting. He's one of the more fascinating recruits this cycle, not from like a superstar standpoint. Obviously, he's only a 3-star kid, but just really fascinating considering the bloodlines, considering that he's a project kid. Like, I haven't put in my future cast for Michigan, and it seems like a layup to do it, but I haven't put in my future cast for Michigan just because I don't know if Michigan's going to make a run here, just because there's a lot going on with where he's going to maybe end up, as far as position wise.
There you have it. There's our rundown of who could be next, joining Marlin Klein as a tight end for the Wolverines in the class of 2022. Great stuff there from EJ. Remember to head over to thewolverine.com, use promo code BLUE60, get all of our premium content for free for 60 days here. Football season coming up, recruiting. We're on the road all the time here during the high school football season, checking out recruits. So promo code BLUE60 at thewolverine.com for 60 free days, and we'll see everybody next time.